My guess is that Lakota people all across the homelands from this area won't sit on the sidelines.
Welcome back to Searchlight Report, a podcast from South Dakota Searchlight that brings you up to date on policy and politics in the Mount Rushmore state. I'm your host, Megan O'Brien, and in this week's episode, I'll recap the third and final scheduled debate between the four candidates vying for the Republican nomination for governor. I also spoke with the only certified Democratic candidate, Dan Allers, about his takeaways from recent debates. But first, you just heard from Nick Tilson. He's an Oglala Lakota organizer and an activist with Indian Collective. Tilson was one of more than a dozen people arrested at a protest in 2020 against a fireworks display at Mount Rushmore attended by President Trump. A fireworks show will return to the National Memorial this year to mark the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Trump is invited. Whether he'll attend is unknown. Cheryl Schreier formerly served as the superintendent at Mount Rushmore. When she first heard about the fireworks display, she thought of an analogy: a rock concert in a phone booth.
There were thousands of people in the past that were just crowded into the memorial, and people would camp out all day long. They would camp out in a spot, not move. It's really, you're there almost all day long, wall-to-wall people.
The National Park Service approved fireworks at Mount Rushmore during the 1990s and early 2000s. But after concerns about wildfires sparked by embers, water pollution from fireworks chemicals, and litter from exploded fireworks packaging, the agency rejected the displays for 11 years. That included Schreier's time as superintendent. The most recent fireworks display was in 2020. Then Governor Kristi Noem asked Trump to reinstate and attend the event, despite concerns about wildfires, environmental impacts, and public health during a global pandemic. But tourism officials estimated the event generated $22 million worth of global advertising. That's according to Jim Hagan, South Dakota's Secretary of Tourism.
And so it just brought a tremendous spotlight, again, to South Dakota, a global spotlight.
A show was approved for this year on July 3rd. The environmental and wildlife concerns remain. During past shows, dozens of firefighters were stationed throughout the surrounding forest to put out stray sparks before they became larger fires. Schreier worries that a massive fireworks display could be dangerous after a dry winter and a spring that's already included large wildfires in the Black Hills.
So if you place thousands of people in an area like that and you have fire starts from fireworks potentially, you have to evacuate all of those people on limited roadways that are going to be already impacted by huge number of vehicles, support staff and vehicles as well. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
The Park Service mostly relied on findings from a 2020 environmental assessment to justify this year's event, with some updated information. This year's report finds that endangered species, including the northern long-eared bat, are in the area. Noise from the fireworks could cause young bats to suffer stress, ranging from possible separation from their mothers to potential death. The species has experienced severe population decline in recent years due to a fungal disease. A protest against the 2020 fireworks and Trump's attendance brought negative attention to the event. Law enforcement arrested more than a dozen people when they blocked the road to Mount Rushmore that day. The charges were later dropped. Many Native American people remain opposed to fireworks at Mount Rushmore. That's according to Nick Tilson, an activist with Indian Collective.
It doesn't make sense to do fireworks at Mount Rushmore. So my guess is that Lakota people all across the homelands from this area won't sit on the sidelines.
In 2020, the National Guard helped law enforcement break up the protest, using pepper spray and pepper ball projectiles as well as shields, which some protesters tried to grab from law enforcement. The protest was about more than fireworks, Tilson says. The memorial, which is in the Black Hills, is on land that tribes lost to broken treaties. Many Native American people and groups, including Tilson's organization, advocate for the return of the Black Hills to Indigenous ownership.
To think that this is about fireworks at Mount Rushmore is to oversimplify the issue. And I think that we need to be having meaningful conversation about what the return of the land in the Black Hills is back to Indian people.
The state will pay $700,000 to fund the fireworks show. That's according to a contract between the state and a California-based company called Pyrospectaculars. The $700,000 will cover the cost of fireworks as well as lighting elements that the state's Department of Tourism says can be used if environmental conditions require an alternative to fireworks. The department did not release further details about the lighting elements. Pyrospectacular's website says it can produce drone light shows. The contract is double what the state paid for just fireworks in 2020, when there was no backup light show planned. It also gives the National Park Service the authority to enforce a go, no-go protocol for inclement weather like rain, high winds, and other weather conditions. Parts of Pennington County, where Mount Rushmore is located, have been experiencing some of the most extreme drought conditions in the state. 2 recent wildfires in the area burned through more than 14,000 acres combined. The event, officially known as South Dakota's Freedom 250 Mount Rushmore Fireworks Celebration, will have 4,800 attendees who won tickets in an online lottery. That's less than the 7,500 tickets that were awarded for the 2020 event. The memorial will be closed July 3rd, except for visitors with tickets for the event. The 4 candidates fighting for the Republican nomination for governor met in their third and final scheduled debate this week, organized by Sioux Falls Live and the Dakota Scout. South Dakota students have a 52% proficiency rate in English language arts and a 44% math proficiency rate. U.S. Representative Dusty Johnson supports measures from Mississippi that boosted reading scores in the state. The plan established a gatekeeping test that third graders needed to pass before starting fourth grade, along with dozens of other provisions.
But I see what they're able to do in a relatively short period of time. We know South Dakota is capable of everything that Mississippi is capable of. The only difference is that Mississippi has a visionary governor in Tate Reeves who went all in on saying that our kids are going to read. And when I'm governor, that's what I'll do.
Moderator Patrick Lally of Sioux Falls Live asked Johnson about another part of the Mississippi plan.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Johnson, part of the Mississippi plan also was extensive funding of pre-K. Are you willing to say it's time for South Dakota to have pre-K available in every school district in the state of South Dakota?
Well, we're not going to have mandatory pre-K in this state.
But again, returning to that, they themselves talk about the vital role that mandatory pre-K played in turning around those test scores. How can you say you're going to do that plan but not spend that money?
Well, Patrick, you can look at something like Mississippi. And by the way, they did 20 or 30 things as a part of the Mississippi Miracle. We don't have to take all of that lock, stock, and barrel. Honestly, that would be kind of a lazy approach for a governor to just say whatever they did, what we're going to do. Instead, we're going to look at what is evidence-based, what is consistent with South Dakota values, what can we budget for and make sure that we can deliver, and let's together come up with a roadmap rather than just saying, well, we're not going to change anything, just do it their way.
South Dakota is one of 5 states in the country without a state-funded preschool, according to a recent report from a national early education group. Speaker of the House John Hanson told Lally he would help kids attend the school of their family's choice.
Meanwhile, teachers, which are at the bottom rung nationally in South Dakota when it comes to pay, you see administrators, though, the education bureaucrats, they're making a lot more money. I think that's completely out of whack. I think we need to focus on delivering actual excellent education for students. And beyond that, I think we need to put parents back in the driver's seat. And so whether that's in public school or whether that's non-public school or homeschool, I've been a supporter of scholarships for families so that they can choose the best education option for their family. I'm going to put families and kids first in this state again as governor.
Just to be clear, when you say scholarships, that is taxpayer money, correct? I mean, just define that for people. When you say you're for scholarships, what does that mean?
Yeah, correct. Yep, it's your ability to use your own tax money to choose the best education option that works best for your family.
Businessman Toby Doden says too much education funding has gone to administrators and bureaucrats and pledged to create a Department of Government Efficiency.
We have to get serious about spending money on the places and the people and the things that need it the most. My Department of Government Efficiency is going to do a full statewide audit. But the second thing that they're going to do in perpetuity is manage all of the departmental budgets and make sure the money is going to the people and places that need it the most. And at the top of that list is K through 12 education. The fact that half of our grade school students can't read and write on grade level tells me that we have a serious issue. And as a business leader, when we invest $2.1 billion and half of our kids can't read and write on grade level, it throws up a big red flag, and I'm going to attack it as soon as I'm governor.
Governor Larry Roden says he trusts the state's education leadership.
The test scores in South Dakota are not acceptable. We're nowhere near the bottom of the heap, but that's not good enough. The test scores that you said need to be better, and they're going to be better. In South Dakota, our Secretary of Education, Joe Graves, I have a great deal of faith in him and his ability to follow directive in changing things around. First of all, we're going to put phonics back in, and the science of reading, phonics back in the classroom.
He also mentioned that the state is moving away from an Obama-backed education initiative known as Common Core.
We've changed our curriculum already. We're getting rid of Common Core math, and we're moving to common sense, so our parents can get re-engaged with their kids in doing their homework.
For more coverage on the Republican debate, check out Joshua Heyer's reporting at SouthDakotaSearchlight.com.
Hi, I'm Seth Tupper, editor at South Dakota Searchlight. If you want to know more about what questions will be on the ballot or keep up with the candidates for state and federal elections, we've got the coverage you'll need this election season. Our reach goes from East River to West River with journalists in Sioux Falls, Pierre, and Rapid City. You can check out our election coverage on our website, SouthDakotaSearchlight.com, and subscribe to our free newsletter at SouthDakotaSearchlight.com/subscribe.
The primary election is June 2nd, and early voting has already started. In order to win the Republican primary, a candidate needs 35% of the vote. Failing that, there will be a runoff for the top two candidates. The winner will be on the general election ballot this November. He'll face Dan Ahlers, a Democrat who is unopposed for his party's nomination. I sat down with Ahlers last week to talk about his thoughts on the state's education system.
Well, I'll tell you, the one area where I actually agree with somebody is Toby Doty wanting to increase teacher pay. I do think that we should be doing that. We made a commitment when that sales tax increase was passed back in 2016 to do that and to strive not to be last, to be in the middle or at least a little bit higher, something that was comparable to our costs of living in South Dakota, something that would help us keep and retain teachers. The additional testing, we already have testing. There's plenty of testing out there. Go back and talk to your teachers. Talk to your supporting staff. Talk to your administrators, and they will tell you what they need. And they don't need more programs. They need to be able to do their jobs. They need more local control. I have no problem with charter schools, homeschooling, but anything that takes funding away from public education, I'm not going to be for. Doing private school, doing homeschooling, those things are all a person's personal choice. And when you make that choice, there's a cost associated with that. We need to continue to invest in public education. It serves everyone. Public education doesn't get to pick and choose who their students are. Charter schools and private schools do.
I also asked him about what he's taken from the Republican candidates' approaches to property tax relief.
There are programs out there for seniors. There are programs out there for veterans and people with disabilities to get a portion of their property taxes back. And those requirements are not that difficult, and the bar is not too high for those. We just don't talk about it. There are also property tax freezes for seniors. We're really doing a poor job of those of highlighting and promoting those programs. We might need to be looking at if it's a barrier, if it's a paperwork issue, if it's a bureaucratic issue, then we need to look at simplifying that process. But these are things that we can start doing right now without ever changing the law. I do think that we need to look at how we assess property taxes. Where you're seeing the biggest impacts are in the two largest metropolitan areas, and not just Sioux Falls, but the surrounding area, or Rapid City and the Black Hills. And that's because people are paying more than the actual value of the home. It's driving up the costs, and some of that is also due to our own leaders recruiting people to move here from out of state. We're the freest state in the nation. Come here, don't pay taxes, come to South Dakota. So who do we get? A whole bunch of people who don't want to pay their fair share of taxes in their own state, so they come to South Dakota. They come from places like California, and they pay crazy amounts for houses that are well beyond what we would ever pay for them here. It distorts the market. It raises everybody's evaluations, and not in a healthy way.
Allers spoke about the state's role in economic development and supporting agricultural producers in South Dakota.
So I think that we need to be more focused on ourselves. We need to be supporting our own industries. And when we do, we will see a much better return on those dollars. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's creating new markets, the diversification of our agriculture. I think there is also more that we can do to help our farmers transition and to be able to transfer that farm to a new owner.
It's been more than 50 years since South Dakota voters sent a Democrat to the governor's mansion.
Well, I think you've seen what one party rule has given you for the last 50 years. Ask yourself, is education better than it was then? Or is healthcare better than it was then, and your access to it? Are your property taxes going down? Do you feel like you can afford to buy a home if you're a young person? Can you afford to stay in your home if you're an older person? The answer to many of these is no. I would say all of them for the vast majority of South Dakotans. So let's put someone in there that will actually deliver on what they say. I need Republicans, independents, and Democrats in order to win. So who do you think is going to work harder for you? We're not New York Democrats. We're not California Democrats. We're Dakota Democrats. We're here. We value the same things that Republicans do. We just have different pathways of getting there.
That's all we have for this week on Searchlight Report. The podcast is based on reporting by South Dakota Searchlight's staff, editor Seth Tupper, senior reporter John Holt, and reporters Joshua Heyer, Mackenzie Huber, and me. I write the scripts and produce the audio, with editing by Seth Tupper. Audio this week came from recordings by South Dakota Searchlight and the Republican debate organized by Sioux Falls Live and the Dakota Scout. South Dakota Searchlight is part of States Newsroom, the nation's largest nonprofit news organization. Until next time, I'm South Dakota Searchlight's Megan O'Brien with the Searchlight Report.